Welcome back to the Flutter tutorial. Today, we will show you how to build Android and iOS apps that can log in with role-based and permissions by accessing the REST API. So there will be a different screen or view that is accessible for each different role. Each role has a different permissions array. Its permissions is represented by a screen, function, or REST API endpoint access. This tutorial divided into several steps. Step number 1, preparation. Step number 2, create a Flutter application. Step number 3, create Flutter models. Step number 4, create Flutter HTTP service. Step number 5, create Flutter Authentication service and Interceptor. Step number 6, create login and register screen. Step number 7, create home screen and drawer. Step number 8, create users CRUD screen. Step number 9, create role CRUD screen. Step number 10, create add permissions to role screen. Step number 11, create product CRUD screen. Step number 12, run and test Flutter application to Android and iOS devices. The REST API will consume our existing Node.js MySQL auth role permissions from the previous tutorial. So, we will focus on Flutter Android and iOS application building. The flow of this Flutter app is very simple. The app will start with a login screen. If the user has not registered, there's a register screen to register as a new user. A new user will have an admin role automatically managed by REST API backend. After successful login, the user will show the home screen with a drawer menu that contains module for users, roles, and products management (CRUD). The access to each menu and module item depends on permissions owned by the logged-in user, otherwise it will throw a 403 or forbidden message. The following tools, frameworks, and libraries are required for this tutorial. Flutter SDK, Node.js auth role provision REST API, Android SDK, Xcode, Terminal on Mac or Linux, or CMD on Windows, IDE, Unreal Studio, IntelliJ, or Visual Studio Code. Let's get started to the main steps. Step number 1, preparation. Install Flutter SDK. To install Flutter SDK, first we have to download Flutter macOS 2.5.3 stable zip. Then extract the file to your desired location. Next, add Flutter tools to the path. Next, to make iOS and Android binaries that can be downloaded ahead of time, type this Flutter command. Check the required dependencies. To check the environment and display a report to the terminal window to find dependencies that are required to install, type this command. We will have summaries like this. Setup IDE. We need to set up the IDE to make it work with the Flutter app easily and compatibility. Start the Android Studio. We will use this IDE. Then open Android Studio menu, Preference. Choose Plugins in the left pane. Type Flutter in the plugin Marketplace. Then press Enter. Next, click the Install button on the Flutter. If there are prompts to install Dart, click Yes. Restart the IDE when prompt to ask to restart. Now the Flutter is ready to develop Android and iOS mobile apps. Step number 2. Create a Flutter application. After the IDE setup is complete, it will back to the Android starting dialog. Choose Create a new Flutter project, then choose Flutter application. Click the Next button, then fill the required fields and choose the previously installed Flutter SDK path. Click the Next button, then fill the package name with your own domains and leave the include Kotlin support for Android code and include Swift support for iOS code blank or unchecked. Then click the Finish button. Next, run the Flutter application for the first time. In Android Studio toolbar, choose the device and MindDart is a starting package. Step number 3. Create Flutter models. We need to add the models that represents our responses from the REST API. There will be user, role, permissions, and product models. So create a new package inside the lib folder by right-clicking the lib folder, new, package, then giving it the name models. Next, create these files inside that models package. Next, open and edit lib models users dart. Then add these lines of dart codes. As you can see, this model relationships with the world's model because the REST API has one-to-one relationship between users and roles models. Next, open and edit lib models roles dart, then edit lines of dart codes. As you can see, there's a model relationship with the permissions model because the REST API has one to many relationships between role and permission models. Next, open and edit lib models permission dart, then add these lines of that codes. Next, open and edit lib models product chart, then add these lines of that codes. Those models are optional and we use for mapping the JSON response from the REST API. Step number 4. Create Flutter HTTP service. As we mentioned in the first paragraph, we will use the HTTP library package to access the RESTful API from the Node Express Author Permissions REST API server. Also, we need to secure storage to save the JWT token from successful login and an HTTP interceptor to intercept every secure request to the REST API. For that, install this package by opening and editing pubspec YAML, then add this dependency. Next, click the package get button or pubget button in the Flutter commands at the top of pubspec YAML content. These commands will install the registered dependencies. Before creating the services, we need to create a package and a .dot file. Fill this file with a class that contains the constructor and a variable of REST API URL. This URL is a Node Express REST API that runs on this computer and uses a local network address. Of course, when we run Android or iOS apps, should use the same local network. Next, create a package and a class or objects. services package, and the class API underscore services, where we will put all CRUD, post, get, put, delete methods to all endpoints of the REST API. In this file, add a class of API services. Add the imports before the class name. As you can see, in the imports, we will use a customized Intercept HTTP client instead of default Flutter HTTP. Next, declare client objects that implementing the API Interceptor inside the API service class. Add a request after the client objects to get the currently logged in user details. Add the CRUD REST API operation for the user endpoint. Next, add the CRUD REST API operations for roles endpoints, including endpoints to add permissions to a role. Next, add the CRUD REST API operation for the permissions endpoint. Next, add the CRUD REST API operation for the product's endpoint. All REST API calls are secured and required authorization headers using JWT token. Authorization headers apply in the API Interceptor class that will be created in the next step. Number 5. Create Flutter Authentication Service and Interceptor. Before creating the services for the authentication, login, register, etc., we need to create API interceptors that uses in the previous step. Inside the services folder, add new dot file, API interceptor. Add these lines of dot codes inside this file. As you can see, the JWT token is stored in the Flutter secure storage. This interceptor class will check if the token exists or not, then intercept the REST API request that was previously created by adding authorization headers that contain the JWT token. Next, create the authentication services inside the same package auth.dart. Then fill that file with this line of Dart codes. This interface just contains login and register only for this tutorial. Step number 6. Create login and register screen. To build the view or screens for the mobile apps in the Flutter application, we need to prepare the required dependencies, libraries, or components. This tutorial required an email validator to validate an email text field, Flutter Easy Loading to display a nice progress indicator, and custom fonts. Add dependencies first to pubspec YAML file. Create a fonts folder at the root of the projects folder. Download the custom fonts from the Google or another fonts resources. Ours using Roboto from Google Fonts. Then extract and copy them to the newly created fonts folder. Register those fonts to the pubspec YAML file. Don't forget to run pubget commands. Next, we will configure the easy loading dependencies by open and edit libmain.dart, then add this import. Add the method after the main method for easy loading configuration. Add that method calls inside the main methods. Next, create the package inside the lib folder, lib screens. Then add these files, login.dart and register.dart. Open and edit lib screens login.dart, then add these Dart codes. First, create the class name login screen with extends stateless widget. Don't worry about the imports, they will import automatically. Create a constructor as a constant. Constructor parameters. An error message variable. A variable for the title. Next, create override method to build the widget. And return a material app widget. Then set home of the material app widget to the new stateful login widget. Next, create a class stateful login widget which extends stateful widget. Create variable same as previously error message. And add a constructor with variable key and error message. Create a method to call the state widget. Create the last class that extends the state widget. Add the constructor with parameters error message. Add variable of error message. Declare our service as variable. Declare storage variable. Declare global key of the form set. Declare controller for the email field. Declare controller for the password field. Add variable to indicate the easy loading is loading or not. The default value is false. Create a method to check token. Declare variable that get token from the storage. And make condition if the token is not null. Then go to the home screen. Using push replacements to replace default navigations to the home screen. We are using custom slide right road animation that will be created next. Create an overridden methods in its state. This method will check token and check if there is an error message exists. Then show the error message as the snack bar. finally, create an offhidden widget build. This widget will return scaffold widget with the parameter background color, the body with single child scroll view. This body has child form. Don't forget to add key that previously declared. And this form has child column to make every form widget such as text form field, button, etc. stacked vertically. This column has children, the static text wrapped by padding. We are using previously added fonts as the text style. Add the text form field that warp with padding. With the controller that declared previously. Add another form text field for the password. Add a submit button. Add static text. The static text have the text gesture recognizer that will navigate to the register screen. The button actions on pressed event will validate the form first, then call the login method from the auth service with the parameters, email, and password text that get from the controllers. The response from the REST API might be 200, which means success to post the login, then redirecting to the home screen that will be created next. The other response codes will display the snack bar message. Next, open and edit lib screens, register Dart, then add these lines of Dart codes. The structure of this register screen same as the login screen, and the button action on price event will validate the form first, then call the register method from the auth service with the parameters email, password, name, and phone that get from the controllers. The response from the REST API might be 201, that means success, and then navigates to the login screen. The other message response will be displayed as the snack bar messages. As you see in this register screen or login screen, there is a slide right route or a custom slide animation that will be created in the helper package. And fill this file with these Dart codes. Step number 7. Create home screen and drawer. The users, roles, and products management CRUD will organize from the drawer in the home screen. For that, create a dot file in the screen package, lib screens, home dart. Then add these lines of dot codes. As you can see, this screen uses stateless widgets that include the stateful widget. as the material app home. The stateful widget build returns scaffold that has an app bar, a drawer that contains the menu to access users, roles, and products, a body that has child. Step number 8. Create user's CRUD screen. One of the action buttons in the drawer menu will navigate to the user screens that contains a list of users that registered, added manually. Create the new files under the web screens folder or package, user screens, users detail screens, edit user screen, and add user screen. Open and edit lib screens, user screens, then add these lines of dot codes. As you can see, that screen is extended from the stateless widget, the task constructor with a string variable error message. The stateless widget builds a material app with the home value is stateful users widget that also has a constructor with string variable of error messages. The messages from other screens, API service, and list of users variable is included in the stateful users widgets class. The message is displayed in the inState method and the API call to get the list of users in another method before the build widget. The build widget has an app bar and body that contains future builder that we use the list of users variable then arrange in separate list builder widgets. Inside the body, there are also a floating action button that we use to navigate to each screen. Now create a new package with the name widgets. Then add a new Dart file with the name user list widget. Then add these lines of Dart codes. This list view builder contains the card that has a child of Ingwell that used to navigate to the user details widget using material page root. The child of the card is list tile that contains an icon and leading position, the text as a title and the text as a subtitle. The Inkwell widget has an on-tap event that navigates to the details page. Container, column, image, and text have their own properties and to adjust the style of the layout. Keep in mind, every widget that uses the child only has one widget as its child. If you need to put more than one widget to the parent widget, use children widget property. Next, open and edit lib screens users detail screen. Then add these lines of dot codes. These codes build widgets combinations of container, card, columns, icon, text, and elevated button. The elevated button has unpressed events that actions to navigate to the Edit Data widget with Users Objects Params. Next, open and edit libscreens edit user screen dart. Then add these lines of dot codes. The content of this edit user screens is just a form with a drop-down menu with the items get from the REST API, a few of text form fields, and elevated button that will submit the updated data to the REST API. Next, open and edit libscreens add user screens dart, then add these lines of dot codes. This class declares or requires variables that we save to the REST API, data binding, database helper initiation, and form declarations. The form contains the drop-down button, text form field, and submit button. The actions or submit will save the data to the REST API. It seems like we have an error or warning on some of the screen. So let's check it out and make all things clear. For error in the home dot, we need to add the role screens and the product screens first of the center that will display a single text only. Step number 9. Create roles CRUD screen. One of the actions buttons in the drawer menu will navigate to the role screen that contains a list of roles that added manually from the backend or this Flutter app. Create the new files in libscreens package. Role screen. Edit role screen. Add role screen. Role detail screen. And also add permission screen. And a folder and file in the widgets package, roles widget. Open and edit libscreens role screens dart. Then add these lines of dot codes. These screens are similar to user list screens. Next, open and edit libwidgets role list widget dart. Then add these lines of dart codes. Next, open and edit role details screen dart. Then add these lines of dot codes. Next, open and edit libscreens edit role screens dart. Then add these lines of dot codes. Next, open and edit lib screens at roll screen Dart. Then add these lines of Dart codes. All of these screens are similar to users' screens. Step number 10. Create add permissions to the roll screen. In the previous roll details screen, there are buttons to add some permission to a roll. Also, the Dart file was already created in the previous step. For that, open and edit lib screens, add permission Dart, then add these lines of Dart codes. This time we are using a list of checkbox style generated from the list of permissions that get from the REST API. The selected or checked checkbox style sets from the default permissions that are owned by a role. .11. Create products CRUD screen. One of the Actions buttons in the drawer menu will navigate to the Products screen that contains a list of products that were added manually from the backend or this Flutter app. Create the new files in libscreens package. Product screens Dart. Product details screen. Edit product screen. Add product screen. We will use separate list in the widget package with the name product list widget. Open and edit product screens, then edit lines of Dart codes. Next, open and edit lib widgets product list widget, then edit lines of Dart codes. Next, open and edit lib screens product details screens Dart, then edit lines of Dart codes. Next, open and edit lib screens edit product screen Dart, then edit lines of Dart codes. Next, open and edit lib screens add product screens Dart, then edit line of Dart codes. Step number 12. Run and test Flutter applications to the Android and iOS devices. Before running and testing Flutter applications to Android or iOS devices or simulators, run the Node Express authentication with role permission first. You can read this article to prepare and run the REST API server. So at the end, we just run the Node Express applications using this command. Make sure the MySQL or MariaDB server is running before running that command. To run these Flutter apps to the Android devices or simulator, simply click the play button in the Android Studio toolbar. Make sure your Android device, iOS device, or simulator is connected to your computer and appears in Android Studio toolbar. Here the working Flutter apps on iPhone 12 simulator look like. That is the Flutter tutorial, login, role, and permissions. You can get the full source code and the article in the descriptions below. Thank you.